Hey there, First Coast News. This is Zach Wilcox. We're taking a live look, a live update here at the RISE Doro fire in downtown Jacksonville. We did find out that there is a small rekindling this evening. Right around 9 o'clock, we started to see the fire trucks rushing past the station. Of course, we're about a week into the saga now, and demolition started yesterday. So we have all the demolition crews out here. They had a fire truck with a mobile command station set up here on the west side of the building, and the southwest side of the building, and you can see behind me this portion that has completely collapsed here on the side, kind of making almost a J shape there, or a backwards J. That's where we saw crews for the past 30 minutes or so pouring water on there, just pounding it with water for an extensive amount of time. They just took that ladder down. They had a whole slew of lights up as well. I talked with some folks over at that bar at the arena. In fact, I'll step out so that maybe, Adrian, you can just go ahead and show folks what we're looking at a little bit closer, maybe zoom in on what we've seen. I was talking with some folks over at that bar at the arena, which for reference is on the other side of this building, almost immediately there where the parking garage is for the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena. And over there, they had a gathering tonight, a birthday party actually, for an officer with JSO. About 50 people were there. They had some live music going on, and they wound up being evacuated because of this rekindling of the fire. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. Talked with a few of the employees who told me when they walked out, they were half expecting to see it almost completely up in flames again. So relieved to see that they couldn't actually even really see any smoke. It was on the far side from where they were at. And now we've seen that ladder truck has come down, so that seems like a positive development. Again, all we've learned so far from Jacksonville Fire Rescue is that there was a small rekindling. They had the mobile command station out here to work on that a little bit. This was day 2 of the demolition, which started yesterday. This side of the building, largely intact, probably looks a little bit like an apartment complex that you would imagine. However, the other side of the building, a lot of that wood has come down already. Just piles of debris on the ground, insulation, wood, and there's also, you can almost see into some of the units. We actually noticed some kitchen setups with the microwave still there, some washer and dryer that were practically dangling on the outside of the building because that's where a lot of the wall had already come down on that side. So obviously when this rekindling happened and we saw the fire trucks coming by the station, we want to make sure we got out here to make sure that you're aware of it and to keep an eye on what exactly this means. So we had that evacuation over at that bar at the arena. They're not planning to open up again until Wednesday for the next Iceman game. So they have a couple of days here hoping to not have another rekindling the next time that they come out here. Obviously, it's kind of impacted them throughout the week. They mentioned that parking was a little messy because of Wednesday's game, which was, somewhat immediately after the fire initially broke out. And then we also just learned about an hour ago that Intuition Ale Works, which if you'll follow me here, is on this side of the building, so the other side, they are going to be opening up tomorrow for the first time since this fire broke out last Sunday. So not exactly sure what that's going to look like for them at this point, and if this rekindling is going to have any impact on that, because we found out about them reopening right around the same time that we found out that there had been a rekindling of the fire. But again, fortunately, we've seen that ladder truck come down. We've seen the fire trucks turn their lights off from here. We had a pretty good view of where it was spraying onto about the 6th or 7th floor, right around the top there. For reference, when we initially saw this last week, when it initially started happening, honestly, right around the same time, last Sunday, it was more on the other side of the building that we saw a lot of the attention, a ladder truck up there initially before the flames really started to spread and you could see them bursting out of the top of the roof. Nothing like that today. A lot of it was just some smoke, and then seeing that ladder crew that was up. Seems like they have it under control. We're going to check back in with JFRD here when we get a second to, but just wanted to relay that to you. So we had an evacuation over at that bar at the arena. We had a rekindling of the fire here, and then we also have Intuition Ale Works reopening potentially tomorrow. At least that's what they announced on social media. And I also want to mention that earlier today, on a related note, I talked with a historian about fires in downtown, because we heard the mayor mention that this is far from the first fire we've seen in downtown. We had really an extensive history in the 200 years that Jacksonville has been a city, dating back to the 1850s when a fire in a shed caught 77 buildings on fire in downtown. Then in 1891, a major building, the Mohawk building, was burned down. And then in 1901, we had the Great Fire. I was actually just talking with somebody at that bar at the arena when we were talking about this. She actually mentioned that bar at the arena, which was the sports tavern, the Jacksonville Sports Tavern, it was an older building at the time, is one of the few buildings that actually survived the fire of 1901. 80% of the buildings in downtown burned down, 2,000 buildings, but that building, as well as the church, survived. And that's why we see so much red brick right around this area. In fact, the RISE Doro is kind of contrasting to that, although there is some red brick that they had installed on the bottom 2 layers, that concrete slab. But a lot of the other buildings we see down here, the ViStar, the 121 Financial, the baseball field across the street, have that red brick kind of in honor of, just to match the vibe around here from what was left over from the Great Fire of 1901. So that's kind of a fun fact, that was really a significant fire. And I'm mentioning all this, one, because it's interesting, but number 2, because it kind of does tie in when we're talking about the history of fire here and what happened after that, because after 1901 is when the city adopted building codes that promoted building with things like steel, things like brick, things like concrete, things that were a little more fire resistant, because when that fire happened in 1901, almost everything was wood. A lot of wood construction. That was the predominant thing at the time. So we've seen those building codes change throughout the years, of course, and then that historian mentioned in the 1990s, we started to see this type of construction become popular in California and work its way across the U.S., where you have 1 to 2 stories rather, of concrete, kind of a pedestal, if you will, with all of those wood layers built on top of it. So you can see that is really on display here with the RISE Doro, where you have those 2 layers of concrete and then all the wood above it. The wood is, of course, what burned. So it'll be interesting to see if that concrete pedestal if any of that can be salvaged. But of course, when you have rekindlings like this, it doesn't really bode well. But hopefully this was just a really minor thing. They have it under control now, is what it seems, when they've taken that ladder truck down. I also want to point out, we were driving over in Riverside today, and some of the developments over there are a similar look, those Riverside developments that are right on the water, the same kind of thing, where you have that concrete pedestal and the wood above that. And the concrete is the most expensive and most time-consuming part to structure. So we did hear the developer here at the RISE Doro mention that they're hoping to be able to salvage that and see kind of where they can go from there. So we're just kind of going to have to keep an eye on what that demo looks like. Have not really touched much of that concrete at all. It's mainly been the wood, and on this side, as I mentioned, largely still intact. It looks like it did before the fire, except for maybe at the at the roof where you see a lot of the dips in there. But on the other side, totally different story. A lot of it, the wood totally exposed at this point. Some of it has started to come down, and we've got piles of wood down on the ground. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick update about that rekindling here, about the evacuation tonight. But fortunately, it seems like things are trending in the right direction here in downtown Jacksonville. But stick with us at 11. You'll hear from those folks that I talked with over at that bar at the arena, who gave me an update on kind of what tonight was like for them with that evacuation happening, and still kind of trying to get a little bit back to some sense of normalcy in light of all this. Here we are on day 6 of this, day 2 of the demolition. But for right now, we'll wrap it up here in downtown. Zach Wilcox, First Coast News, on your side.